The vast emptiness between stars had witnessed countless conflicts, but none would compare to what was about to unfold near the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. High Chancellor Dravik of the Zenithar Collective stood before the panoramic viewing screen of his flagship, the Crimson Verdict, watching as 14,000 warships materialized from quantum slip space. Each vessel bore the crimson and obsidian colors of an empire that had never tasted defeat in 400 years of expansion. Dravik's silver skin shimmered under the bridge's amber lighting as he studied the blue marble suspended in the darkness ahead. His 3 hearts beat in synchronized rhythm, pumping ice-cold blood through his ancient veins. At 600 cycles old, he had personally overseen the subjugation of 31 worlds. This primitive backwater would be his 32nd, a footnote in the grand chronicle of Zenithar supremacy. Status report, Lieutenant Kresh, Dravik commanded, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. The tactical officer, a young Zenithar with bright emerald markings along his skull ridges, manipulated the holographic interface with eager precision. All battle groups have achieved optimal positioning, High Chancellor. The target world shows minimal defensive capabilities. Our preliminary scans confirm they possess no energy shields, no plasma weaponry, and their fastest vessels barely achieve a fraction of light speed using primitive combustion technology. A low rumble of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Navigation Officer Thyra, her violet eyes gleaming with confidence, added her own assessment. Their largest military installations are spread across multiple landmasses, High Chancellor. They show no signs of unified command structure. Our intelligence division estimates they're divided into approximately 190 separate political entities, many of which maintain hostile relations with each other. Dravik nodded slowly, processing this information with the calculating mind of a seasoned conqueror. Divided civilizations were always the easiest to subjugate. The humans would likely surrender within hours once they witnessed the true power of the Zenithar Collective. Perhaps some of their leaders would even welcome the Empire's rule as an alternative to their own primitive conflicts. Begin the demonstration protocol, Dravik ordered. I want a show of force that will leave no doubt in their simple minds. Target their lunar satellite first. A precision strike that will vaporize half its mass should sufficiently communicate our technological superiority. The weapons officer, a battle-scarred veteran named Gorath, programmed the targeting sequence with practiced efficiency. Main particle cannon charging, High Chancellor. 30 seconds to optimal firing capacity. Through the viewport, Earth hung serene and unaware. Dravik could see the lights of their cities dotting the night side of the planet, millions of primitive beings going about their insignificant lives, completely oblivious to the transformation their world was about to undergo. In a way, he almost pitied them. Almost. High Chancellor, Communications Specialist Vera called out, her tone uncertain. We're receiving multiple transmission attempts from the surface. They're broadcasting on hundreds of different frequencies using electromagnetic radiation. It appears to be attempts at establishing contact. Dravik waved a dismissive hand. Standard procedure. Ignore their babbling. We sent them our terms 6 solar cycles ago. They chose to respond with confusion and questions rather than immediate compliance. That window has closed. What the High Chancellor didn't know, what none of his intelligence officers had discovered during their surveillance, was that those 6 cycles ago, humanity's response had not been confusion. It had been calculation. The seemingly primitive radio transmissions and disorganized diplomatic inquiries had been carefully crafted misdirection, buying time for a species that had learned long ago that survival often depended on making enemies underestimate you. Weapon charged and ready, Gorath announced. Fire. The Crimson Verdict's main cannon unleashed a lance of concentrated particles that crossed the distance to Earth's moon in seconds. The beam struck the lunar surface with catastrophic force, carving a glowing trench across its ancient cratered face. Rocks and dust erupted into space, creating a spectacular display of destruction visible from Earth itself. Direct hit confirmed, Gorath reported with satisfaction. Calculating damage assessment now. But before he could complete his analysis, every alarm on the bridge erupted simultaneously. Warning klaxons blared as tactical displays flashed urgent red. "High Chancellor!" Kresh shouted, his voice cracking with sudden panic. "Multiple energy signatures detected. Thousands of them. They're emerging from the planetary surface, from their moon, from orbital positions we scanned as empty just moments ago." Dravik stepped closer to the holographic display, his confidence faltering for the first time in decades. "What are you talking about? Show me." The tactical display zoomed in, revealing the impossible. Ships. Human ships. But not the primitive chemical rockets their intelligence had documented. These vessels moved with purpose and speed that should have been beyond this species' capability. Sleek, angular craft that seemed to shimmer with some kind of energy field were pouring out of hidden installations across the Earth-Luna system. "Energy readings are off-scale," Thyra reported, her violet eyes wide with disbelief. "High Chancellor, these vessels are generating power signatures comparable to our own cruisers. Some of the larger ones are reading even higher." "Impossible," Dravik breathed. "This must be sensor malfunction. Run full diagnostics." "Diagnostics complete and confirmed accurate," Kresh replied grimly. "High Chancellor, whatever these humans have been showing us, it wasn't the full picture. Not even close." From the shadows of Earth's night side, a massive structure began to move. It had been positioned in geostationary orbit above the Pacific Ocean, disguised as a simple communications satellite array. But now it unfolded like a predatory flower, revealing its true nature. The structure expanded to nearly 3 times the size of the Crimson Verdict, bristling with weapon ports and glowing with contained energy. "Incoming transmission," Vera announced, her voice shaking. "It's from that massive structure. They're broadcasting on our own secure military frequencies. How could they possibly know our encryption codes?" Dravik demanded, but he already knew the answer made his blood run colder. They had been watched just as carefully as they had been watching. "Put it through," he commanded. The main view screen flickered, and a human face appeared. It belonged to a woman with dark skin and gray-streaked hair pulled back in a severe style. Her eyes held the hardened look of someone who had seen combat and emerged from it stronger. Behind her, banks of equipment and uniformed personnel moved with military precision. "High Chancellor Dravik of the Zenithar Collective," the woman said, her voice calm and measured. "I am Defense Coordinator Patricia Okonkwo of the United Earth Defense Coalition. Your demonstration against our moon has been noted and recorded as an act of unprovoked aggression. You have entered our system with hostile intent, ignored diplomatic channels, and opened fire on our territory. I'm here to offer you a single opportunity to withdraw your forces peacefully." Dravik felt his warrior pride surge back. "You dare threaten the Zenithar Collective? We have conquered worlds for 4 centuries. Your primitive civilization cannot possibly stand against us." Patricia's expression didn't change. "High Chancellor, you came here expecting to find a divided, primitive species with no real defensive capabilities. What you actually found is a unified human race that has spent the last 6 cycles preparing for exactly this scenario. We've been spacefaring longer than you think. We've simply been very, very careful about what we allowed you to see." The silence on the Crimson Verdict's bridge stretched for several heartbeats before Lieutenant Kresh broke it with another urgent report. "High Chancellor, the human vessels are establishing a perimeter formation. They're not attacking, but they're positioning themselves strategically around our fleet. Our movement options are becoming severely limited." Dravik forced himself to remain calm, drawing on centuries of military experience. Bluffs and misdirection were common tactics among desperate civilizations. This human coordinator was likely exaggerating their capabilities, hoping to avoid a conflict they knew they couldn't win. "How many vessels have they deployed?" he asked Kresh. The tactical officer's fingers danced across his console, compiling data from thousands of sensor feeds across the Zenithar fleet. "Current count is 8,243, High Chancellor. The number continues to rise. They're still launching from hidden positions throughout the system. 8,000 ships. The number struck Dravik like a physical blow. That was more than half the size of his invasion force. Even if these vessels were inferior in quality, quantity had its own merits in warfare. But something else troubled him more deeply. Where had they been hiding such a massive fleet? Analysis of their technology, Dravik demanded. What are we actually facing? Navigation Officer Thyra pulled up detailed scans on the auxiliary displays. High Chancellor, this is disturbing. The human vessels appear to utilize a form of quantum shielding we've only theorized about. Their propulsion systems generate gravitational distortions consistent with spacetime manipulation, technology that should require at least Type 3 civilization status to develop. That's impossible, Dravik insisted. Our surveillance showed them testing primitive fusion reactors only 20 cycles ago. With respect, High Chancellor, Thyra continued carefully, what if that's exactly what they wanted us to see? Look at this. She highlighted a portion of the scan data. These vessels show signs of extensive use. Where patterns on their hulls suggest decades of operation, perhaps longer. They haven't just built this fleet in the last 6 cycles. They've had it all along. Patricia Okonkwo's face still dominated the main view screen, patient and unervingly calm. Dravik studied her carefully, looking for any sign of the fear he was accustomed to seeing in the faces of those about to be conquered. He found none. Defense Coordinator, Dravik said, choosing his words carefully, you present an impressive display. But displays can be deceiving. The Zenithar Collective has faced deception before. It has never saved those who attempted it. Patricia leaned back in her chair, and something that might have been amusement flickered across her features. High Chancellor, let me tell you a story about humanity. About 4,000 years ago, one of our ancient military strategists, a man named Sun Tzu, wrote something that has guided our thinking ever since. He said, all warfare is based on deception. When able, appear unable. When near, appear far. When far, appear near. She paused, letting her words sink in. You see, we've been watching the galaxy for much longer than you've been watching us. We've observed your conquests, studied your tactics, and learned from the mistakes of the civilizations you've subjugated. Every one of them made the same error. They showed you everything they had. They met your strength with their own strength, and they lost because your strength was greater. We chose a different path, Patricia continued. When your scout ships first entered our system 72 years ago, we made a decision. We would show you exactly what you expected to see. A young, divided species, still struggling with primitive technology, still fighting among ourselves. We broadcast our conflicts, our technological limitations, our political divisions. All of it carefully curated to paint a picture of weakness. Dravik felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. 72 years. Their intelligence reports only went back 50 rotations. What had they missed in those early observations? Meanwhile, Patricia said, we did something humanity has always excelled at. We unified in the face of a common threat. 200 nations became one government. Trillions of credits were diverted from public projects into classified military development. Our brightest minds, working not in competition but in collaboration, achieved in decades what might have taken centuries. And we did it all in secret, beneath the surface, where your sensors couldn't penetrate and your assumptions wouldn't let you look. On the tactical display, more human ships continued to appear. The count had passed 9,000 now. Gorath, the weapons officer, cleared his throat nervously. High Chancellor, their larger vessels are charging weapons systems. Energy signatures are consistent with directed antimatter projection. Antimatter weapons. The Zenithar Collective had experimented with such technology but found it too unstable for practical military use. The containment systems required were extraordinarily complex and prone to catastrophic failure. Yet these humans were apparently deploying them across their entire fleet. "You're wondering how we did it," Patricia said, as if reading his thoughts. "How a species you classified as primitive managed to develop technology that rivals or exceeds your own. The answer is simpler than you might think. Necessity is the greatest teacher, and we had the greatest necessity of all. Survival." She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display split. Beside her face, images began to appear. Massive underground construction facilities carved into the Earth's mantle. Shipyards hidden in the asteroid belt, camouflaged to appear as natural rock formations. Manufacturing centers on the far side of the moon, always facing away from any angle where Zenithar scouts might observe them. "We built our defenses where you weren't looking," Patricia explained. "We tested our weapons in deep space, far from your surveillance satellites. We trained our pilots in simulators so realistic they couldn't be distinguished from actual combat. And most importantly, we learned patience. We waited. We watched. We prepared." Lieutenant Kresha's voice cut through the explanation. "High Chancellor, the human vessels are adjusting formation. They're creating firing corridors. This positioning is consistent with a coordinated strike preparation." Dravik's military instincts screamed at him to act, to strike first before the situation deteriorated further. But another part of his mind, the part that had kept him alive for 600 cycles, urged caution. Everything about this situation felt wrong. The Zenithar Collective never entered a battle without overwhelming tactical advantage. Right now, that advantage was far from certain. "Defense Coordinator Okonkwo," Dravik said, his voice strained, "what exactly are you proposing?" "A mutual exchange of information," Patricia replied. "You withdraw your forces from our system immediately. In return, we don't demonstrate just how effective our weapons systems actually are. You return to your empire and inform them that Earth is not a viable target for conquest. We continue monitoring the galaxy and maintaining our defensive readiness, and we don't share our technological developments with the 14 other species in this region that are currently living under Zenithar occupation." That last statement hit Dravik harder than any weapon could have. "What are you implying?" Patricia's expression hardened. "I'm implying that we've been in secret communication with resistance movements on 7 of your occupied worlds, High Chancellor. We've been sharing intelligence, offering support, and in some cases, providing the same kind of technological assistance we gave ourselves. Your empire's expansion has created a lot of resentment. A lot of people would be very interested in learning that the mighty Zenithar Collective can be resisted successfully." The bridge of the Crimson Verdict had gone absolutely silent. Every officer stared at their displays, watching the tactical situation continue to deteriorate. The human fleet had grown to 10,000 vessels now, and their formation was textbook perfect. Whoever had trained these forces knew exactly what they were doing. "You're threatening to arm our enemies," Dravik said slowly. "I'm offering you a choice," Patricia corrected. "Leave peacefully, and this encounter remains between us. Your reputation stays intact. Your empire continues as before, just without Earth added to your list of conquests. But if you choose to engage us here, regardless of the outcome, every resistance movement in your territory will know about it within hours. They'll know that humanity stood up to the Zenithar Collective and you backed down. Or worse, they'll know that you tried to conquer us and failed." Gorith leaned close to Dravik, speaking quietly. "High Chancellor, I must advise caution. Our tactical analysis suggests that if combat is initiated, casualties will be severe on both sides. The humans have positioned their vessels to maximize crossfire opportunities. Our larger ships would be vulnerable to concentrated strikes from multiple angles." Dravik closed his 3 eyes, thinking faster than he had in decades. Pride demanded that he press the attack, that he demonstrate Zenithar superiority regardless of the cost. But wisdom, hard-earned over centuries of warfare, suggested a different path. A warrior who lived to fight another day was worth more than a warrior who died proving a point. "And if we withdraw?" Dravik asked Patricia. What guarantee do we have that you won't pursue us? That you won't use these weapons you've developed to launch your own campaigns of expansion? Patricia's expression softened slightly. High Chancellor, humanity didn't build this fleet because we want to conquer the galaxy. We built it because we refuse to be conquered. There's a difference. We have no interest in dominating other species or claiming territory beyond our own system. What we do have is a very strong interest in being left alone to develop on our own terms. She leaned forward. Your empire has ruled through fear and superior firepower for 4 centuries. That's a long time, but it's not forever. Sooner or later, you were going to encounter a civilization that refused to submit. Today, you found one. How you respond to that discovery will determine whether your empire continues to grow or begins to fracture. Choose wisely. The weight of decision pressed down on High Chancellor Dravik with suffocating force. Around him, his bridge crew waited in tense silence, looking to their commander for guidance. Through the viewport, the human fleet maintained its patient vigil, thousands of ships holding position with disciplined precision that spoke volumes about their training and coordination. How many lives? Dravik asked quietly, the question directed at no one in particular. Weapons Officer Gorath understood immediately. His clawed fingers moved across his console, running combat simulations with the latest tactical data. The results appeared on Dravik's personal display, numbers that seemed to burn themselves into his consciousness. Estimated Zenithar casualties in a full engagement, 12,300 vessels versus 10,000 human craft of unknown but clearly formidable capability, ranged from 30 to 60%. That meant between 4,000 and 8,000 ships destroyed, crews numbering in the millions lost to the void. And for what? To conquer one more world? To add one more star system to an empire that already stretched across dozens of light years? Dravik had lived for 600 cycles. He had commanded fleets for 400 of them. In all that time, he had learned one fundamental truth about warfare. Battles were won by strength, but wars were won by wisdom. Sometimes the wisest decision was knowing when not to fight. Defense Coordinator Okonkwo, Dravik said, his voice carrying across the communication channel with careful formality, you have made your position clear. I find myself facing a situation I did not anticipate. This troubles me. It should trouble you, High Chancellor, Patricia replied, her tone neither triumphant nor mocking. It should trouble you deeply. Not because you found a species willing to defend itself, but because of what this moment represents. How many other civilizations in this galaxy have hidden strengths you never discovered? How many of the worlds you've conquered might have resisted successfully if they'd had time to prepare as we did? Dravik felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Doubt. Not about his military capabilities or his tactical knowledge, but about the fundamental assumptions that had guided Zenithar expansion for generations. They had built an empire on the premise that superior technology and overwhelming force were always sufficient. They had believed that any civilization capable of mounting a serious defense would be obvious in their preparations. Humanity had proven that belief catastrophically wrong. Lieutenant Kresh spoke up hesitantly. High Chancellor, long-range sensors are detecting additional energy signatures at the edge of the system. Whatever the humans are revealing to us now, they may have even more assets held in reserve. Of course they did. That was the lesson here. Everything the Zenithar fleet had observed, everything they were now facing, was what humanity had chosen to reveal. What remained hidden could be even more substantial. Patricia Okonkwo had compared her species to an ancient strategist who advocated for deception in warfare. How much of what Dravik was seeing was real, and how much was further misdirection? The terrible truth was that he couldn't know. And uncertainty was the deadliest enemy any commander could face. Navigation Officer Thyra, Dravik said, his decision crystallizing in his mind, begin plotting a withdrawal course. All vessels are to maintain defensive formations during the retreat. No aggressive maneuvers, but I want shields at maximum and weapons ready to respond to any provocation. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the bridge crew. Relief mixed with shame, the complex emotions of warriors choosing survival over honor. High Chancellor, Goreth protested weakly, the Empire's reputation, our history of conquest, surely we cannot simply withdraw without. Without what? Dravik cut him off sharply. Without sacrificing thousands of lives to prove a point? Without engaging in a battle we might not win? Tell me, Goreth, in your 400 cycles of service, have you ever faced an enemy that truly frightened you? The weapons officer hesitated, then shook his head slowly. Then today you've learned something valuable, Dravik continued. True courage isn't fighting against opponents you know you can defeat. It's recognizing when caution serves better than valor. The humans have taught us that lesson. We would be fools not to learn it. He turned back to the view screen where Patricia Okonkwo waited patiently. Defense Coordinator, the Zenithor Collective accepts your terms. We will withdraw our forces from your system. However, I would request one concession. Patricia raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. A meeting. Not here, not now, but in the future. There is much the Zenithor Collective could learn from humanity's approach to defense and technology. Perhaps there is also much we could teach you. The galaxy is vast, and there are threats far greater than any single empire. Species that work together, share knowledge, and respect each other's sovereignty are stronger than those who exist in isolation or constant conflict. For the first time since the communication began, Patricia Okonkwo smiled. It was a small expression, but genuine. High Chancellor, you've just articulated the founding principle of what we call the Coalition for Mutual Defense. It's an organization we've been building quietly over the past 40 years, reaching out to species throughout this region who are tired of living under the threat of conquest. Perhaps the Zenithor Collective would be interested in transitioning from conqueror to partner. Dravik felt something shift inside his ancient chest. Not surrender, but transformation. The universe was revealing itself to be far more complex than the simple binary of conqueror and conquered that had defined his entire life. That is a conversation worth having, he acknowledged. Though it will require significant changes in how my people view the galaxy and our place in it. All growth requires change, High Chancellor. Your species has been expanding outward for centuries. Perhaps it's time to start expanding inward, becoming something more than just efficient conquerors. The Crimson Verdict's engines hummed to life, and across the vast expanse of space, 14,000 Zenithor warships began their carefully coordinated retreat. The human fleet maintained its positions, weapons still charged but not pursuing. They had made their point without firing a shot in anger, and that restraint spoke to a wisdom that Dravik was only beginning to appreciate. As Earth grew smaller in the viewport, Dravik found himself thinking about the future in ways he never had before. The Zenithor Empire would survive this day, but it would be forever changed. Word of this encounter would spread, carefully managed by both sides perhaps, but spread nonetheless. Other species would hear that humanity had faced down the mighty Zenithor Collective without submitting. Some would take hope from that. Others would see opportunity. The Empire would need to adapt or fracture. And adaptation meant becoming something new. High Chancellor, Lieutenant Kresh said quietly, what do we tell the Imperial Council? How do we explain this retreat? Dravik considered the question carefully. The truth would be difficult for many to accept. The Zenithor Collective had built its identity on military dominance. Admitting that they had been outmaneuvered by a species they had classified as primitive would shake the foundations of their society. But lies would be worse. Lies would mean learning nothing from this experience. Lies would ensure that the next time they encountered a civilization like humanity, they would make the same mistakes. We tell them the truth, Dravik decided. We tell them that we discovered a species that values freedom more than we valued conquest. We tell them that humanity taught us the difference between strength and wisdom. And we tell them that the galaxy is changing, and we must change with it or be left behind. Far below on Earth's surface, in the hidden command center from which Patricia Okonkwo had coordinated humanity's defense, celebrations were beginning. Centuries of secret preparation had paid off. The Zenithar fleet was withdrawing, and Earth remained free. But Patricia herself felt no urge to celebrate. Instead, she stared at the tactical displays showing the retreating alien armada and thought about what came next. This victory had been won through preparation, deception, and the willingness to show strength at the critical moment. But it was only one victory. The galaxy contained countless other civilizations, some potentially more dangerous than the Zenithar Collective. Humanity had bought itself time and respect, but the work of ensuring Earth's safety would never truly be finished. Coordinator Okonkwo, one of her senior officers, approached, a man named Thomas Bradford who had helped design many of the weapon systems that had convinced the Zenithars to retreat. The Deep Space Observation Network is tracking the alien fleet. They're maintaining their withdrawal vector, no signs of deception or regrouping. Good, Patricia replied. But keep monitoring them until they're completely out of the system. I want to know if even one ship breaks formation. Understood. Also, the Security Council is requesting a full briefing. They want to know if we're certain the threat has passed. Patricia almost laughed. The threat hasn't passed, Tom. It's just changed form. Now instead of facing an invasion, we're facing something potentially more challenging. We're facing the possibility of actual diplomatic relations with an empire that has spent centuries conquering everyone it meets. We're going to have to teach them, carefully and patiently, how to coexist rather than dominate. You think they'll really change? Tom asked skeptically. I think they'll try, Patricia said. That High Chancellor, Dravik, he's old. You don't live for 600 years without learning adaptability. He recognized something important today. He recognized that the galaxy he thought he knew is different from the galaxy that actually exists. That kind of realization can transform individuals and civilizations alike. She pulled up a display showing Earth, blue and beautiful against the black of space. Somewhere down there, billions of humans were going about their lives, most of them completely unaware of how close they had come to invasion, how dramatically their world had almost changed. Our ancestors dreamed of reaching the stars, Patricia said softly. They imagined meeting alien civilizations, sharing knowledge, exploring the cosmos together. What they didn't fully account for was that space is not empty and peaceful. It's full of empires and conflicts and species that see expansion as survival. We had to become something different than those dreamers imagined. We had to become warriors who could defend our dreams. Do you think we'll ever get to be those dreamers again? Tom asked. Exploring in peace, building relationships instead of defenses? Patricia was quiet for a long moment, watching the retreating Zenithar fleet on her displays. Maybe, she finally said. Maybe if we're very lucky, very patient, and very wise, we can help create that kind of galaxy. Not through conquest, but through example. By showing species like the Zenithars that there's another way. She turned to face Tom directly. But it starts here, with this moment. With us choosing not just to defend ourselves, but to extend a hand afterward. That's what will really change the galaxy. Not our weapons or our tactics, but our refusal to become the very thing we defended against. High above Earth's atmosphere, the last of the Zenithar warships crossed the boundary of the solar system and engaged their quantum drives. In seconds, they vanished into the vast darkness between stars, carrying with them a lesson that would ripple through the galaxy for generations to come. The lesson was simple but profound. Power without wisdom leads to defeat. Strength without understanding leads to weakness. And the universe always has room for surprises, especially from those you underestimate. In the decades that followed, this encounter would be remembered by both species as a turning point. For the Zenithar Collective, it marked the beginning of their transformation from conquerors to partners, a painful but necessary evolution. For humanity, it confirmed that preparation, unity, and the willingness to defend one's freedom could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. But perhaps most importantly, it taught both species something about the nature of survival in a crowded galaxy. Strength alone was not enough. Technology alone was not enough. What mattered was the wisdom to know when to fight, when to negotiate, and when to extend trust even to former enemies. The stars continued their ancient dance across the heavens, indifferent to the dramas playing out among the tiny beings who crawled upon their surfaces and sailed through the spaces between them. But for those beings, for humans and zenithers alike, the universe had just become a little less certain and a little more full of possibility. And that, perhaps, was exactly as it should be.